They've subpoenaed the Clintons and some other people, but I anticipate that'll be a pretty controlled hearing. I don't think you're going to hear any questions about Mark Middleton or Chinagate or what Epstein was doing those 17 times he went to the White House. It's all going to be about everything that happened after Clinton was no longer president, which is, if you look at how the Epstein case has been treated with respect to Bill Clinton for years now, it only focuses on Clinton after he left office.
In this interview, Whitney Webb reveals how the Epstein scandal is only the tip of the iceberg. She explains how global intelligence agencies, organized crime, and billionaire elites work together to control information and protect themselves. Webb exposes why the real evidence and files remain hidden, and how blackmail and financial crimes connect the world's most powerful people. If you want to understand how the system really works, keep watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, or follow the channel.
It's been pretty persistent in not being forgotten about, which I think now, in the case of the Trump administration, they really wish people would move along and forget about it. So much is going on in the U.S. with U.S. policy that it's, stuff that's huge news, it gets end up buried a few days later. And, a decade ago, it would have been a huge multi-month long story. Now it's just a blip. The news cycle is just so fast. There's a lot of reasons why that could be. But I think also just because, it was the Epstein case was particularly popular with Trump's base, less so with the Democratic base. Now a lot of the influencers in that media circuit are either being like, yes, it was a hoax, or have moved on to other things.
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. It reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied.
I think it's pretty clear that the administration does not plan to release further documents, and they've said that. There's this planned congressional hearing where they've subpoenaed the Clintons and some other things, some other people, but I anticipate that'll be a pretty controlled hearing. I don't think you're going to hear any questions about Mark Middleton or Chinagate or what Epstein was doing those 17 times he went to the White House. It's all going to be about everything that happened after Clinton was no longer president, which is, if you look at how the Epstein case has been treated with respect to Bill Clinton for years now, it only focuses on Clinton after he left office. It's the same for Bill Gates too. They only focus on the Gates-Epstein relationship after Gates was no longer chairman of Microsoft. They find tidbits that are interesting within a spectrum, and people are so entranced by what's in that spectrum, they don't look for anything beyond that. They just assume that's all there is. It is a Pandora's box in a way. Yeah, sure. Because as my books show, the world is basically run by a meta cartel.
Whitney Webb digs into the reasons behind the ongoing cover-up. She shows how governments, corporations, and intelligence agencies cooperate to protect a global elite network she calls the meta cartel. This isn't about left or right, it's about maintaining a system where the truth is buried to keep the powerful safe. Epstein's crimes were just one tool. The bigger scandal is the network, the money, and the blackmail that still remain in the shadows.
I would argue, yeah, it is a cartel. It basically operates with impunity, and they have no accountability for all of their crimes, even when they're exposed here and there. Some people just are protected and above the law. Almost inexplicably. And, as I point out in my book, it's a lot of the same actors over and over again, the same institutions. And you can see when one institution crumbles, another one pops up in its place. So as an example in the book, I talk a lot about the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, BCCI, that implodes in 1991. It's covered up by William Barr when he was Attorney General, who covered up Iran-Contra, Promise Software scandal, and BCCI, all as being Attorney General, and later would return to kind of do that for Trump 1 when he was, Attorney General again. But after BCCI implodes, a lot of their portfolio of, organized crime and shady interests goes to the banks related to this guy named Edmond Safra. And Edmond Safra dies in his home, supposedly from arson, allegedly set by his American nurse because she wanted to set a fire and then save him from it, but then didn't save him from it. Anyway, he was very good friends with Robert Maxwell and a lot of these figures that pop up all over the place in the Epstein case. And then who absorbs his banks? HSBC. They basically take those over, and then HSBC gets exposed. It wasn't the Panama Papers, but it was like one of those consortium of journalists that published these leaks basically revealed a lot of prominent people that were part of these HSBC Swiss accounts that had been inherited from Safra. Epstein was one of them. Some associates of Epstein, like Flavio Briatore, are there. But also, HSBC was laundering money for drug cartels. And who didn't go after them when they were in charge of the Bank of England? Mark Carney, who is now Prime Minister of Canada.
I have a question. Who's ready? Who's ready? Who's ready to stand up for Canada with me? Who's ready to build Canada strong? Okay, we got that settled. That's good.
He was head of the Bank of England. There's pictures of him hanging out with Ghislaine. So, whose, father, Robert Maxwell, was banked by Safra, among other things.
Webb continues on Ghislaine's thoughts on her father's suspicious death.
Ghislaine thinks it was rogue Mossad agents and Sicilian mafia hitmen that killed him, working together. It's kind of funny because that's kind of the thesis of my book. It's like the National Crime Syndicate, which was the Italian mafia, their New York branch, and later their head got deported to Italy and sort of set up shop there. And then the Jewish mob that was headed by Mayor Lansky. And that basically this crime syndicate is the crime syndicate that teamed up with, the intelligence agencies. Because this Operation Underworld, all of that, the formation of this nexus predates the founding of the State of Israel. And so a lot of these actors, and I note this in my book too, were involved with the arming of the Haganah and these paramilitary groups that later create Israel in 1948, and then help them set up their intelligence agencies. So that's sort of how you get all this overlap between, Mossad, Britain, CIA. It goes back to, the beginning of Israel's national security complex. These people could not have gotten away with all of this as it wasn't for mazes of holding companies, shell companies, Byzantine offshore banks, and all the other things that enable financial criminality in today's world. So obviously the connections are similarly going to be labyrinthian and Byzantine. I pretty convincingly show in my book that there's a lot of baton passing going on between the generations. So like my book starts in the 40s, and I follow a lot of these institutions and people through the years. I talk a lot about how a figure named Roy Cohn, who was Donald Trump's mentor, and how he passed a lot of things on to Trump, how a lot of people that were in Cohn's network got involved with Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell hired them when he came to the U.S., including figures like Robert Keith Gray, that were PR executives on their face, but also tied to the CIA, involved in sex blackmail, close friends with William Casey, who was CIA director under Reagan, among other things, and how they, got involved with Maxwell's entry into New York City, which is how, mainly how Ghislaine got so enmeshed in New York society, and also, teamed up with Epstein in that same period of time. So, all of this matters, and these connections are significant because this baton passing shows that this is a generational thing. And in the case of Maxwell, Robert Maxwell's children, at least the ones that were close to him, because you have two that sort of splintered off from the larger Maxwell clan, but are very open that, after he died, they were trying to figure out how to rebuild his empire. And using his Rolodex of contacts to rebuild that. And they did it in doing so. You have Ian and Kevin doing all this interesting financial stuff after, their father's death. And then the twins, Isabel and Christine, make this search engine company and get involved with Microsoft and Bill Gates and all this stuff back in the 90s. And Ghislaine Maxwell was reportedly involved in that too. And then also very involved with Epstein and all sorts of other things. And eventually becomes one of the main people at the UN developing sustainable development policy for the world's oceans.
Whitney Webb makes it clear that Epstein's story is about much more than one man. It's about a global web of power that operates above the law. Blackmail, corruption, and cover-ups keep the truth hidden, and the same elites in charge. If we want change, we can't let this story fade away. If you want more truth like this, make sure to like, subscribe, or follow the channel now and share this video to keep the story alive.